So we are here at another episode on the Product Engineer podcast by epilot. And I'm joined by Nishu.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nishu Goel. I work at the team Manifest at epilot. And we have Mateus here, who apparently also works at the same team.
Yes.
Also does the same stuff, which is blueprints.
Welcome to the podcast for product engineers.
So basically, let's get straight into the idea. Our team works as the market experts. That's our focus area. And blueprints are, in a short way, the way for you to configure things at epilot very fast. So I think Nishu was here long before me, and when we still had not that much configuration at epilot, and things took super long to be put into market, and blueprints is the way to shorten that.
Yeah, you forgot to mention that you decided to leave us in between and then come back because we were doing blueprints, and he thought that, oh, this is an interesting topic happening now and I have to come back for it. So yeah, it's interesting that you already mentioned that this is a fast way to configure things. If we go a little bit in the, in how epilot used to onboard customers earlier, it was a lot about getting a customer, then suggesting to them that, hey, this is the time. This is the amount of time that we are going to take to onboard you, because there's a lot of configuration for your specific use case. It could be, right, there's a variety of use cases that we have for the energy industry. And for every customer, there would be this very specific use case that we would do. But it was mostly a standard version of the use case that they were doing. Let's say they were doing grid, they would have a template of sorts where you would configure our journeys, which we call journeys are basically a flow of, questions that you ask your customers, your end customers, about things that you want. Do you want to install a solar panel, for example, at your house or anywhere in your, maybe, office location? And yeah, for that use case, we would set up, and it was this huge effort from our customer success team who would do it all manually.
Exactly. It made my heart melt when we saw the message from one of our CS colleagues that it used to take about 3 weeks more to set up a customer to make sure they are onboarded and start using. And now it's like a matter of days because, with blueprints, everything is super fast.
I think we are being even more humble by saying just 3 more weeks. I remember it was 4 or 5 months to configure things, and now it could just take 2 weeks maximum to, have your blueprints and then enable them, configure your stuff, and accommodate it to your use case. We didn't exactly mention what blueprints are, though.
Exactly. So get into the technical bits. We leverage the Terraform usage. So by using Terraform and custom providers, we can then basically have our code defining the configurations that we have at epilot.
Can I call it configuration as code?
Exactly. So we are creating a new thing here, configuration as code.
Yeah.
So CAC, right? And the idea is pretty simple then. We have the Terraform resources as the files and so on, and you can directly install those using our providers. So it makes then for a really, again, easy use of configuration. Is basically templating all the resources.
And if you want, maybe there are some listeners who are actually interested in how we approached it. Remember, it was only Mateus and myself who were doing it as skunk works. Do you remember that phase where we decided to do all the Go code ourselves, write all the Terraform providers ourselves? We started it with one API, automations at epilot, for which we decided to build a Terraform provider using Go. Yes. I had a little bit of CRUD background in Go. You were also learning it, but you had done some stuff as well. So we started it, but then there were types that come into picture. And that's when we realized how long it could take.
Exactly.
And that's when we also realized that the amount of APIs that we have at epilot, it would take a complete Golang team to develop all those Terraform providers.
And to maintain it. Yeah.
And to maintain it, because it's not straightforward. But fortunately, was it Viliami who came across this third party who was doing this stuff, who was building your SDKs and Terraform providers with your APIs?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, and I'm not, of course, they are not sponsoring us to mention their name, but it was Speakeasy, really good, team who helped us build our providers. We maintain them by ourselves mostly, but there's also automated PRs that track if there are any changes on the APIs, and then they create a PR to the Terraform provider. and then that provider gets updated. We could use it on our API and then actually use it on the Manifest API. When I say Manifest API, that's basically our code to copy configurations or export configurations as a Terraform resource, which can then be installed, imported in maybe another account. It could be published as a marketplace blueprint. When I say marketplace, this is this big epilot marketplace that contains blueprints, now apps as well.
Yes.
And
Which you can also visit. If you go to marketplace.epilot.cloud, you can take a look at the blueprints we have, the apps we have. And it's very interesting how out of a sudden, everything at the company started to be shaped around blueprints. Like all the meetings, like the product meetings we have right now, or the vision meetings and so on. I'm like tired of listening blueprints because, again, they are such a huge step on not only making the things faster, but more reliable. Because again, if everything, all the configurations were before in someone else's head, now they are clearly described and they can be reused. And the same technology that enables us to use blueprints enables us to do other things in the platforms as well. So it helped us with, like, for example, now having sandboxes and being able to put the resources from a sandbox into a production org so you can test around before you do anything. So all of that combined gives me a pretty nice vision for the future of how even blueprints can start to be used more and more at epilot.
And this is such an important point that all of that configuration was in the heads of people, right? There was such a knowledge base that we were missing to be documented, because there are some things that you cannot even document because you realize them on the go. Maybe while building a blueprint now is when we realize that, hey, you know what, for this use case, this is how the configuration makes sense. But for a similar use case for a different customer, it wouldn't. And all of that is now documented as our Terraform HashiCorp language code in our blueprints, which are packaged as zip files, which contain a lot of automations, journeys. If we have to talk about the resources, there's like, what's the maximum that we saw? 1,000 resources in one blueprint?
I think so. The EEG blueprint, I think, was close to 1,000 or a little bit more than 1,000 resources.
I can never say the full EEG, the full form of it in German.
Yeah, my German level is not there yet as well.
Yeah, but I think I wouldn't say that I'm tired by listening to it. I really love every time there's a customer, that gets announced as someone who we got into epilot or someone who's getting onboarded. You would see blueprints there, right?
Yes.
There would be one or the other mention of blueprints, because now this is how we approach customers, or this is how I think the sales team approaches customers, that, hey, we have this use case which you could install by one click. Right?
Exactly.
This one click bit is really important, because now there's no 3 months of time where customer success would spend time together with the customer to build it and configure it and so on. But they say that, hey, there's this one click install that you could do for your use case, and boom, you're ready to jump into epilot, sell energy to your customers. And that, I think, is a big selling point if you think about.
Exactly. So especially for smaller customers which won't have the time to configure the things themselves or to learn about epilot to then configure things, we could just say like, hey, look, here's a blueprint, you can install it by yourself, it's documented, you can do it. Or even if they need a little bit of help, now we have our partners which can help them do the configuration and so on. And for the bigger ones also, it's helpful because they can bootstrap a specific use case and then just keep configuring things on top of it because our platform is so flexible. Which brings me to a point about the genius of blueprints, which is long before 360, we had a platform that was pretty much hard-coded. You had the hard-coded use cases, especially for the energy sector and so on, which, again, it worked for some customers, but especially bigger ones, they need more customization. You couldn't have them. And then we went the other side, and then we had a full-blown, super flexible platform, which also has its cons normally, because now everything gets more complex to handle. But now with blueprints, it's kind of like we are going to a middle ground, a middle path here of, okay, we give you something ready. If you don't need more configuration, all's good. You can you're set, you just do your stuff. But if you still need more configuration, you can keep using the platform in general and then configure your stuff. So to me, that's really beautiful. And again, it shows that for now, we are using blueprints mostly for bigger use cases, so like end-to-end and so on. But I still have in my mind that maybe in a few months or so, when people start picking up on that you can also use blueprints for even smaller scoped features.
Is that what you call mini blueprints?
Exactly. So I'll call that mini blueprints, but in theory, they're the same, right? They're the same idea, same types of files and so on. It's just that you're having a smaller use case And then maybe, for example, to increase feature adoption. You have a new feature, the configuration is maybe not that well highlighted or whatever, even if it is, right? You need some way to communicate it. So if we have some sort of hub, again, the marketplace doesn't have to be in the same place of the full end-to-end ones, but if you have a place for people to go and check out, what are the new features that maybe I'm missing out and so on, it's going to make that process much easier.
Yeah, and I think what we are talking about now is kind of leading us towards blueprints-driven development.
Yes.
BDD.
Yes.
I know there's already a term for it, but BDD, let's call it, right? And that's exactly what you're saying. Features, for example. I was also thinking about it, that any new feature that comes in, you don't have to really ask the team to enable it for you and so on, but it would be available as a package, as a blueprint. And then you could say that, hey, today I feel like testing custom design in journeys or custom automations, custom flows, for example.
Yep.
You would just click on the blueprint that's available, install, and then it makes the feature available to you, navigates you to where you would want to test it, because we already offer navigating to the resources anyway.
Exactly.
And boom, you're ready to explore the feature by yourselves. Also for customers. To mention one more point, like you said, the external marketplace doesn't have to be used for this, because every customer in their own account could have this internal feature available or an internal marketplace sort of thing where they could go and explore things.
Exactly. And even if you think about the more complex features that customers sometimes don't get the chance to use because, again, they're super complex, like automations, workflows, and so on, can be distilled by a blueprint to make sure that they can start using it. It's, again, even if you think about how software now is being changed by AI and so on, and you kind of have to be very specific to what you need. So people sometimes go with like product requirement documents and so on, or you have some kind of workflow that you need to document everything. I really like that you mentioned like blueprints-driven development. So something like this, where you're really defining what you need, and then you have the technology that applies all of that. I think that's really the future of how things are going to look like. And especially if you consider, for example, blueprints are mostly going to be used for now by configuring users, right? Executing users. They really don't need it because they just need to execute on the submissions that come, the users and so on. They need to do the sales process. But imagine a way where if you are executing user and you need to go to a specific use case, you work in a specific use case, you go to your blueprint. You don't need to call it blueprint for them. That's another question. But you go to your blueprint, and then from there you can navigate to all the resources that you need to work on. So then you're very focused. Like you don't need to bother with a lot of other things in the platform which are not going to help you, do your job. Basically, you can focus on your blueprint, on your very specific use case.
Yeah. And I have this, while you were talking, I was thinking about this interesting story that I have to share, which was, so you know how customer success has been configuring these things for every specific use case manually until last year, I'd say, right? So it's been so many years of manually doing it. And this was the first time, because we wanted to improve blueprints, this was the first time I, as an engineer, also decided to join customer success in building that use case. We were doing it eventually to package it as a blueprint, but we had to build the use case first, right? To have it as the source to then export it. And it's crazy amount of work. I used to think that engineers are the most productive and most hardworking people at the company at epilot because we are doing the most work. We are working after hours mostly, of course, by choice. But then, right, all of this. But then that's when I realized that customer success is doing crazy work, and this is the regular work that they do. This is what they do every day, and it's not once. They were not building it for once, right? They were not saying that, hey, okay, house connection use case, I would do it today and then I don't have to do it again. They were doing it every time there was a customer onboarding for a house connection use case.
Yes.
And we were building it for a district heating use case now, the journey. We only did the UI, the front end, the journey that the user or the customer would see. And that itself was crazy amount of work.
Yes.
Adjusting those blocks, each step has multiple amount of blocks.
Yes.
Every block has a configuration that, hey, for this payment option, this is what you'll see on the UI. So this is how you adjust. They can be like 20 more than 20 steps. You have to keep in mind that, hey, on a mobile device, for example, if the step has too many blocks, then you have to keep scrolling.
Yes.
And that gives it away, that people don't like it so much. So you have to also keep in mind that one step doesn't have more than 2 blocks. And then you can have multiple steps instead of having multiple blocks, because for the mobile view, it doesn't work. And all of that knowledge is where?
Exactly. And if you think about it, if you think about it, the platform is constantly being updated. So now they have to keep up. Like if something changes the way it's done, they have to kind of relearn it on the fly and then be able to do it again. So again, with Blueprints, you can just update it and that's fine. Because I remember even sometimes like simple things like, oh, I want to, sell a specific type of product and have it be available just in certain areas and so on. Back when I used to work at Taro, it is quite complex because again, if you need the thing to be very flexible, you need the complexity. It needs to be abstract to support it. But now, again, with Blueprints, we merge the thing because we have a base to use, and then you can configure as much as you want afterwards.
Man, it reminds me of the challenges that we had to face with Blueprints because of those ever fast changing configurations, because there are so many teams at epilot, engineering teams, and everyone's pushing features every day, right? There's new features every day. And to keep up in Blueprints, because there was one approach that we manually update the the Terraform providers to support that. We have automated most of it. I would say, 60-70% of it we have automated, but there are still, it's something to still keep in mind that, hey, there was a new feature and it could be something that we don't support in Blueprints yet. So this was a phase.
yeah. And honestly, it helped also maintain the quality of the overall tech stack, because we had to basically test everything, right? If some API was not that well built, Blueprints basically made sure that we need it to work. So we have to adapt the API or something. So
and anyone testing or using Blueprints would just go, hey, Blueprints don't work. They break, right? But this was the first time that something, in this case Blueprints, was connecting everything throughout epilot platform.
Yes.
So it was a big change, but then it made sense that Blueprints would break anytime there was something wrong on any teams, any APIs, any use case that we were doing, anything that would break. I remember there were so many times that Blueprints were able to find some wrong configuration somewhere or some API chain somewhere.
Exactly. We made sure that people, shouldn't do more breaking changes on APIs or even correct the way the API is being done, because sometimes the API would be different than what the actual code was doing and so on. So it's basically making sure that everything's tidy, because Terraform is very annoying on that sense. It needs things to be very strictly well done and so on, considering you're a provider.
Yeah.
So it is in a way super helpful that, again, now we are making sure the quality is up there.
Yeah. And I'm also really proud of how we brought down the time that it takes. Remember when we started with it, how long was it taking? 10 minutes or something?
Even more, sometimes 20 minutes it would take for an installation to run. So,
we were just doing something wrong, I think.
We were testing around first, right? We were trying out very different, because again, Terraform is not really made for that. We are really stressing out the tech here.
Also, initializing the providers, for example, takes forever. Then we introduced the cache, what do you call it? The provider cache, exactly. Yeah, that helped and so on. And then what, has it come down to 5 minutes already now?
Even less. So depending on, again, obviously it will depend on the amount of resources, but sometimes just a minute and then you have it.
Yeah.
So, or even less, a couple seconds.
Yeah, for example, if you're importing just a design of a journey from one organization to another, or installing it as a blueprint, which doesn't make sense for the use case, but for example, it would be right away.
Yeah,
right?
Basically right away. But even if you have a small journey, couple products, automation and so on, it doesn't take that long anymore.
Yeah.
Just because of all the optimizations we did and the way we are using Terraform as well. And it's a very interesting thing,
Yeah. What do you think? What's next? What's coming for us next as Blueprints? I know we are building a lot of blueprints. As us as engineers, customer success is building a lot of blueprints as well. We have introduced something called customer success engineers even at the company. But what do you think? What after this?
I think again, in my head at least, blueprints are going to be used also for executing users. I think that's the next big thing, because after we made sure everything's tidy, for configuring users, we get everything stable and it doesn't break, it's all fine and so on. Then the next step in my head would be this, executing users being able to focus on their actual work and then basically, just focusing on the use case of that blueprint and then doing everything from there in a way.
Yeah, interesting. I'm really looking forward to what's coming next. But I think this was more of a sneak peek into the, the blueprints topic and the idea and how we kind of started with it. I would really love to like sit for longer because we can talk for hours about blueprints with the
Yes.
amount of time that we've spent on it and the amount of work that has gone into it and the amount of outcome, the
Yes.
impact that it has created. I'd say let's come back and, do a longer podcast where we talk about everything and touch all of those points as well. But for now, what do you say?
I think this is a very good, like you said, sneak peek. And I'm sure you are curious now to know more about the blueprint. So make sure to see our marketplace. So marketplace.epilot.cloud.
He is very good at it. He has to plug it in.
Yes. I made it, so I need people to see it. No, I'm kidding. But it's a very nice thing. And yeah, I think we can wrap it up. Remember also to check out other episodes. So I know you have other episodes in the podcast.
A very important one, the Product Engineer podcast. Don't miss it. Remember my face and the title, Product Engineer podcast.
Nishu,
Don't
yes.
miss it. Yeah.
With other 3 people, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And I have one with Viliami as well. Show, don't tell. Yes.
Oh, was that the topic?
Yes, it was
Okay.
a very nice one. So again, if you're listening, you should definitely check that out.
Well, then, thank you very much. We had a blast being here, even if it was for a super short time. But the sneak peek, I think, would keep you hooked to it. And we are coming back for sure. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much.
You've been listening to the podcast for product engineers. Don't forget to subscribe and join us next time.